for tuning in to another edition of Outside the Shop with me, your host, Daryl D. And as always, I want to thank you for tuning in, whether it be via YouTube live stream, Facebook Live, or Twitter/Periscope. And this is the show where I get to talk about everything that I normally don't get the chance to talk about on my regular sports podcast, Barbershop Sports Talk, which you guys can all find on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcast from. Check out the description below. I'm going to have a little clip on YouTube, by the way. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, folks. Every subscription, like, and give comments, too. I want to hear what you guys are thinking about the show, except questions. But on the description below, I still have the Josh Allen. Is he the best quarterback in the NFL? So check that out. Also, the Bills. They just undressed the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Should the Bills be number one in any NFL power ranking? So if you want to check that out, check on the YouTube channel. It's about a 2-minute listen. And if you want to check out the regular podcast, that's already up. Me and my guy Kenny Sims, scouting expert for Terms of 47 Sports. We broke down everything that went down for Week 5 of NFL action. As I'm getting some water right here. But let's start with this. So John Gruden, right? There were some racial comments that were made in an email, and this came out Friday night. And it was talked about in his press conference, and it was talked about ad nauseum today on a bunch of different shows. And he basically commented on DeMaurice Smith, who is he's the head of the Players Association, on his appearance, and said he has the lips the size of Michelin tires. He also, I believe, he insulted Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, as well as he insulted owners as well. I don't want to get too much into what he said, how racial it was. I think that speaks for itself. I don't think he should get fired. I personally wouldn't fire him. I personally wouldn't be too offended myself, but right, not all black people think alike. Not everybody in the world thinks alike, right? People have different opinions. I think the issue where this John Gruden is going to go is how do the guys in the locker room feel? Because I think a lot of people are talking about how they feel, what they think is insensitive. And at the end of the day, I get that people make statements and talk about justice and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, none of that matters, right? What you think, what I think, doesn't really matter in this situation. What matters is the men in that locker room that have to. That's what's really going to decide if John Gruden loses his job. If they lay down, they don't play, and they say that's the reason they don't want to play for him, you know what the Davis family's going to do? Cam Gruden, he's going to be out. See you, wouldn't want to be you. If they rebound after the loss against Chicago Bears, they continue to play hard for him, right? They make it to the playoffs. They say, that's my coach. He's never been a racist bone in his body. We love him. Then John's going to stay. It's that simple. And that's how it's going to play itself out. And that's how it's going to be in the locker room. And I don't know John Gruden as a man. You don't either. So I think it's going to be up to those guys who work with him, who deal with him on a daily basis. Now, this could split apart the locker room. This could cause a lot of issues in the locker room. But this is the test of leadership. It's going to be very interesting, right? Very interesting indeed. So now I want to go to this. So teams that impressed me, the Buffalo Bills, they destroyed the Kansas City Chiefs. The Bills are the best team in the NFL. It's not particularly close. They manhandled Kansas City out of the pocket. I believe the Chiefs had 4 turnovers. The Bills were extremely impressive. Going into Arrowhead is no easy place. The last time the Bills were in Arrowhead was the AFC Championship game, and they lost. They won in dominant fashion. So the Bills impressed highly. They do it all in every single phase of the game. Special teams. This team has no weakness. They're smart, physical, tough football team, and the sky's the limit. And I'm telling you, right? If Kansas City can't beat them, I don't know how many teams are going to be able to beat the Bills. So the Bills are very, very impressive, and they're just mowing down these teams, blowing out like 3 or 4 straight NFL teams. And we've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers game was a fluke. The Bengals, they impressed me even in a loss. They can play with the team. Like, the Bengals are a good team. They're not a bad team. They're not this team that's 3-2 just by accident, right? Like, they're a good team. They have a good quarterback, good wide receiver, good wide receivers, solid front seven, good cornerback play, good secondary play. They tackle very well. They have a good running game. The offensive line isn't good, but as soon as they pass that up, they could be competing for a divisional title and going deep in the playoffs. That's how it feels. Gave the Packers everything they could handle and more. The Buccaneers, they just destroyed the Dolphins. The Dolphins were supposed to have one of the best secondaries in the NFL with guys like Byron Jones and Xavier Howard. Tom Brady's playing his best football. 5 touchdowns, I believe 0 interceptions. The Buccaneers look phenomenal. The Chargers winning a shootout against Baker and the Browns. My God, Justin Herbert is special. And Brandon Staley, that John Carroll magic. Brandon Staley and the GM, Tom Zalesko. John Carroll alum, right? So it doesn't surprise you, but the Chargers impressed me. The Cardinals winning 17-10 against the San Francisco 49ers, finding out a way to win a tough, grimy football game where the offense wasn't flowing. That's very impressive and the sign of a good football team. At number 2, we have Dallas Cowboys absolutely destroying the New York Football Giants. Saquon and Daniel Jones went out of the game, but the balance that this offense has with Dak, with Amari Cooper, with Zeke, with Tony Pollard, it's insane. The Cowboys are going to be an issue, and people should start looking at it as a Super Bowl contender. In terms of teams that unimpressed me, the Denver Broncos, they lost to the hapless Pittsburgh Steelers. Didn't score on anybody, right? They awful. Teddy Bridgewater, he is what we thought he was. The defense, it's okay, but the Broncos, they're mediocre. They're not that great. Very unimpressive for a team that started 3-0. But then again, 3 victories came against the Jets, the Giants, and the Jaguars. So take that for what you will. The Tennessee Titans, they found a way to win against the Jaguars, but the defense, James Robinson had like 9 yards per carry. That shouldn't be happening in an NFL game. This is in high school football. This is in college football. That should not be in an NFL game. They run Derrick Henry into the ground. God bless the guy. Titans are a hapless football team that just so happen to be in the atrocious AFC South. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they are impressed me. Just Trevor Lawrence has yet to have a game where I said and I thought to myself, this guy is the best QB prospect of our lifetimes. I haven't seen it once, and I had Trevor Lawrence my QB coming into this draft. I had Trevor Lawrence as my number 1 overall prospect coming into this draft. But you know what? Maybe I was wrong, and I'm man enough to admit that. Yeah. Trevor Lawrence has had not one game when I said he's a generational QB prospect. He's talented. He has a lot of good physical ability. You know who else has a lot of good physical ability? Justin Herbert. But nobody's saying Justin Herbert is a generational QB prospect. But to the Jaguars, just, disappointing. Urban, there's issues with Urban and James Robinson. Why wasn't he on the field for a 4th down play? It's just not good in Jacksonville. Next up, we have the Panthers. Sam Darnold, 3 interceptions, just miss away the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Listen, a good way to have you lose football games is to turn the football over. You can't do it. You cannot turn the football over. He gave that football up like he was from the street, right? The from the streets. Sam Darnold was up in the streets the way he was giving up that football. Insane. You can't win with turnovers. It just can't happen in this league. The Panthers, I'm right. Great football team, but you can't turn the ball over, give your defense short field. It just won't work. The Patriots barely getting had to come back against the Texans. The Patriots are not a very good football defense. Davis Mills had like a 19-play drive to open up the game, and then he had a 57-yard touchdown that was a blown coverage. The Patriots defense that people have lauded as a great secondary, they got exposed. Davis Mills won 3 touchdowns, 0 picks, and 4 the New England defense apart. Not very good. And lastly, the San Francisco 49ers, Shanahan making some questionable play calls. I thought his ego got in the way of a goal line rollout. It's taking the field goal. They're trying to run it with Trey Lance, Lamar Jackson. I just don't understand it. They lost the Cardinals. They deservedly should have lost to the Cardinals, and it just leaves me looking at where does San Francisco go from here. On the show with Kenny last night, Kenny said with Trey Lance, they look like the Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears, and nobody's saying the Chicago Bears are a playoff team, so I guess that's where the 49ers are. And that's it for the teams that impressed and unimpressed for week 5 of the NFL season. So let's get into some college football. I'm going to give you my first 4 and last 4 out. Start at number 8, Michigan. Good, solid win. Tough, physical. At number 7, I'm going to go with Penn State. Still going to have them at 7, right? They were 4. Had their backup quarterback in. He couldn't throw. Awful quarterback play towards the end, but I think Penn State will get it together. They're still at number 7. And number 6, Oklahoma, coming back to beat Texas in the Red River rivalry. I do want to say this on Oklahoma really quickly. Spencer Rattler was benched. I think this is going to be an interesting scenario to look out for. He was benched for, I'm just going to get his name up, Caleb Williams. Williams was 16 to 25, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Rattler was only 8 to 15 for 102 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Looks like we have a QB controversy. Spencer Rattler could be in the transfer portal. He was projected to be the number 1 overall pick in this upcoming NFL draft. If he's getting benched, then he's going to have to transfer portal and see ya. And I think this is very interesting, right? You're seeing a guy. This is how coaches, and Lincoln Riley, by the way, said he benched him because of turnovers, but this is how coaches can influence NFL career, your professional sporting career. They can bench you and you can just be done, right? That's why things are different in college. College is a little bit more archaic, and why maybe a guy like Urban Meyer struggles, by the way, in the NFL, because coaches have so much power to control your career that they just don't have in the NFL. So at number 5, I'm going to go with Ohio State. They got a blowout win there, look really good. They have the best offense in the Big Ten. At number 4, Cincinnati. They blew out Temple. Cincinnati has a great roster. I would have picked them ahead of Iowa, but I got an argument with my guy Ben Karen, host of Sports Squad, in favor more so of Iowa, and I'll give him that. And speaking of Iowa, tough, physical, old school, old style football team getting a tough win. They're the real deal. Number 2, I'm going to go with Alabama still, right? They lost to A&M, right? But it was away. They have a win against Florida. They blew out Miami. I think we also believe eye test-wise, Alabama is one of the top 4 teams in the country. Bad game. It's allowed to happen, right? These things happen every once in a while. And Nick Saban said the players need to remember how this loss felt against Texas A&M. By the way, I don't want to be the Texas A&M Aggies when they have to go to Bryant-Denny next year to play Bama. Bama is going to light them up. And lastly, number 1, for my guy Brett Slater, the Georgia Bulldogs, the number 1 team in the land. Georgia, they do it in all phases of the game. They don't need good quarterback play to win. They just need you just need to hand it off, not turn the ball over. Don't F the game up, and that defense will take you home. It's similar to the 2000 Ravens with Ray Lewis and all those guys. This Georgia football team is special, and they are number 1 in my rankings. And lastly, I'll get to the Ravens versus Colts game. I'm going to go with the Ravens. I think this is a tricky game, though. I think we're going to see this be fairly close. I'm going to go with the Ravens, though, and I'll say they win 24-20. But I think it's going to be a competitive Monday Night Football game to watch, and that's all we have for this edition of Outside the Shop. Thank you, everybody. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Have a great day, and God bless.